right, we've got major Nazca mummy news, guys. This is awesome. 2 of the specimens have been declared cultural patrimony of Peru, meaning they're legit. So let's talk about it. Yeah, this has been going on for a while, this debate over whether or not the mummies, the Nazca mummies, could be declared cultural patrimony of Peru. And I just think this is an amazing legal precedent, because right now we have these alien hybrid beings being declared actual cultural patrimony of Peru. They wouldn't be declared that if they were constructs or hoaxes or anything like that. This is essentially the government of Peru admitting they're real, that they are actual, cultural patrimony. They are important to the culture of Peru, not hoaxes. So huge news from No Pasaron. Good news. Nazca mummies Maria and Wawita have been registered as part of Peru's cultural patrimony by the Ministry of Culture. Wow, the Ministry of Culture of Peru, after a lot of fighting, actually did it. The university will carry out the scientific research. This is an important first step that'll allow the mummies to be exhibited in the future. Not just exhibited, but potentially, it might make it easier to share the specimens or samples to other countries' labs. From Gonzalo Chavez, in Latin America, the Peruvian Ministry of Culture spent 7 years investigating and failed to find evidence that Maria had 2 fingers and 2 toes removed. After 9 years, the specimens were declared cultural heritage, and the University of Ica was authorized to determine whether the tridactyls are human or non-human.
The former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, the man who oversaw all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies, wasn't just aware of UAP crash retrieval programs. According to David Grusch, he managed them. He placed people in critical roles to control information about what got out and what stayed buried. In a new interview on the Megyn Kelly Show, the former intelligence officer who testified before Congress about recovered alien craft and non-human biological remains is going further than ever before. He is pointing directly at the CIA, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and revealing who he believes was the last person to have central control over the entire operation. This comes at a critical moment. Grusch has now officially joined Congressman Eric Burleson's staff to help investigate these very programs from the inside. So let's get right into it. During the interview, Grusch directly addressed General Clapper's appearance in the Age of Disclosure documentary. Take a listen.
I'm a little bit disappointed as a fellow Air Force officer, and certainly General Clapper rose to the ranks as 3-star general. That's all he said in the documentary, that was a program he was aware of. In fact, without being inappropriate, I will say that General Clapper was well aware of the crash retrieval issue, managed the crash retrieval issue, and when he was the DNI, USDI, and DIA director, he placed people in critical roles to manage this issue, both publicly and I'll just say non-publicly as well. And I'll allow the audience distill what I'm saying at the risk of being inappropriate or going too far with my discussion.
Let's break down why this matters. James Clapper served as a director of national intelligence under President Obama from 2010 to 2017. Before that, he was Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He had oversight of every intelligence operation in the country. In the Age of Disclosure documentary, Clapper appears on camera discussing a program that tracked UAPs over Area 51. But according to Grusch, this is only a fraction of what Clapper actually knows. Grusch is saying Clapper didn't just observe these programs, he actively managed them and installed people to keep them hidden.
I was in positions of high trust in the government at the most extreme levels, having walked the halls of the West Wing, personally handled the presidential daily intelligence brief, and had some of the same broad accesses that the president and his cabinet has had over the years, even as a young man across multiple administrations. I figured when I was eventually brought into this topic, working for the UAP task force, I would know this exists. Somebody would have slipped and said something to me. At the time, I was briefed to over 90% of all Black programs in the Department of Defense and also the intelligence community. And I had an arrogant opinion of the topic. I was certainly open to the idea, but I figured I haven't seen any evidence, and I would have been briefed into those kind of things because I had a need to know at the time. So I came into it very similar to you, but open-minded.
Here's what makes Grusch's testimony so compelling. He had access to over 90% of all Black programs in the Department of Defense and intelligence community. He thought if anyone would know about recovered craft, it would be him, based off of his status and his need to know clearance. But he was wrong. Grusch explained that over 4 years, he interviewed more than 40 witnesses with direct knowledge, reviewed documentation and photographs, and came away with what he calls high confidence that these projects exist. Grusch described how the secrecy is maintained across multiple agencies. The CIA handles oversight, the Air Force manages retrievals, the Department of Energy hides the nuclear connection, and private contractors do the reverse engineering work. This is why Freedom of Information requests come back empty. The material sits with private companies, where federal transparency laws do not reach. This is a big reason why the UAPDA wanted to get back all of those crash retrieval materials from private companies over to the government. Now stay with me because this is important.
Providing my findings up the chain, I was just very disturbed to find how this was controlled, the self-licking ice cream cone, unaccountable, everybody owns a piece, nobody owns the outcome, and there's not really a mob boss. The closest person we got that I was aware of was, unfortunately, now deceased Vice President Dick Cheney, Darth Vader himself. Not shocking that he was involved in this. And essentially, when he left in 2009, that was the last time that these activities really had central leadership.
Since 2009, there has been no central authority over these programs. That is 16 years of fragmented control spread across agencies and contractors with no single person who can authorize disclosure, at least according to Grusch. This explains why presidents may not know the full picture. Career officials who outlast any administration have no incentive to brief political appointees they see as temporary. During the global war on terror, funding was redirected to overseas operations. Private contractors went off on their own using what is called the IRAD, or IRAD, Internal Research and Development, continuing work with minimal government oversight. Grusch revealed that when Congress sent legal people to the CIA asking about their participation in crash retrieval operations, the agency gave what he called an extremely disrespectful response. They simply referred lawmakers to the Pentagon's Aero office and declined to answer. He then pointed directly at where investigators should start looking.
There are elements within the Central Intelligence Agency, Directorate of Science and Technology. I would start there. There are certain career officials that are still there that manage the issue. There are certain officials that are long timers in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence that have been there for a very, very long time. That's also helped manage this issue for a while. So I certainly have the Rolodex of names, offices, and I certainly have bumped into the halls and walls facilities where everything is. So I think it's Secretary Rubio liaising with the Vice President and President Trump, getting the boss's strategic vision on this, how they would like to proceed publicly but privately, and start going after some of those agencies.
Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who chairs the task force on the declassification of federal secrets, also joined that same interview, and she described being denied access to UAP footage during a field hearing at Eglin Air Force Base. She and Congressman Gates and Burchett got into a confrontation with the base commander, but according to her, they found a workaround.
Part of how we got some of the information that we did is actually had asked one of the witnesses to draw for me the photograph or the image of this thing that was essentially being denied to us. So they're denying us the actual imagery, but the the military officer was able to actually draw it for me, of which I'm sure they didn't think that we were going to ask them to do that, but we did. And again, even dating back to my own military experience, there was one point when I was stationed at Portland Air National Guard prior to leaving active duty. And at that point in time, there was an airspace incursion that had taken place that some of the pilots had been talking about. One specifically, I said, what is this thing specifically? Are you able to describe it? He couldn't. He got kind of spooked talking about it. And that's in my opinion, he definitely ran into a UAP or saw a UAP or they're chasing one.
Grusch also pointed to a piece of evidence that most people have never heard of, a declassified 1971 Australian government analysis by senior physicist Harry Turner. Now, this formally classified document, now in the Australian National Archives, allegedly discusses how the CIA secretly knew UAPs were real and began a disinformation campaign while working to reverse engineer the technology. He suggested anyone to verify this claim starts on page 7 through 20 of that document. And we just received a similar report from the UK National Archives, where that government in the 1990s were collecting UFOs and attempting to reverse engineer them. So where does this all go from here? Grusch has joined Congressman Burleson's staff, and according to Liberation Times, he is putting together an investigation plan to work through the committee. Burleson wants to establish direct communication with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Representative Nancy Mace, after watching The Age of Disclosure, said she learned more from that documentary than from official congressional hearings. She wants a secure facility briefing with Secretary Rubio. What stands out from this interview with Megyn Kelly is Grusch calling out Clapper directly. He is saying a former director of national intelligence actively managed the cover-up and installed people to maintain it. The question now is whether the current administration will act. Grusch has the clearances, the connections, and now the congressional platform to push this all forward. Do you think James Clapper should be called to testify under oath about his involvement? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.